Hi, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Chris Easton. I am a global commercial lead for IPS, Innovative Patient Solutions at Takeda. But today my role is to chair a panel of thought leaders, essentially, who are going to share and address a question for you. I will introduce them in a moment, and hopefully Evgueni will appear because he's disappeared from the screen just now. But essentially, before I ask them to introduce themselves, I want to just take a quick moment to pose the problem statement for today and really what the panel will be addressing, which is the starting point is the question, is pharma ready for the future of health? And that's a really big, bold statement. So, you know, when we talk about this, we're generally thinking pharma's current model to compete and differentiate doesn't really sufficiently enable new approaches to collaboration or leverage digital health solutions. We know the world is super fragmented. There's lots of very busy people and activity going on, but there's also, it creates some challenges along the way. So on our panel today, every member that is here is a founding member of the Future of Health Alliance, a community, a group, if you like, of like-minded individuals that are working within the digital health space. And ultimately, with that, I'm really going to let them introduce themselves, and we'll spend a few seconds for each person, just so that Hicham, Evgueni, and Sander can all tell you who they are, and briefly introduce themselves. So, Sander, I'm going to start with you. Maybe kind of 30 seconds on who you are, what you do, and then we'll maybe move on to Hicham and Evgueni last.
Perfect. Thank you, Chris. So hi, everyone. My name is Ruitenberg. I work for Novartis based in Basel, and I lead a lot of the digital work in the immunology space there on the global side. And specifically related to the topic of today, obviously all of my work relates to it, but specifically here, I'd like to highlight we do a lot of work on connected health. It's an important priority for Novartis in the data and digital space. And my focus is really around how for our immunology portfolio that really redefines how we think around what does a drug profile actually mean? How do you think of that in new ways, combining the drug itself with device technology, digital strategies and solutions, as well as data strategies. And so in that sense, the future of health and the future of the pharmaceutical industry in that space is really something I'm working on a lot on a daily basis.
Super. Thank you very much. Hicham, over to you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Hicham. I'm based also in Switzerland, in Zurich. I work for Takeda, and I'm leading the global program called Integral and Personalized Care Program. And basically, we're covering neuroscience, oncology, GI, and rare disease. And basically, we're working from R&D to commercial. Basically, we are closely working with Chris Easton team. And basically, one thing I'm really fascinated about is the future, and maybe later we can talk about the future in plural here, because no one can predict, what the future will look like tomorrow, than 30 years from now.
That's true. That's very true. And then last, I'll ask Evgueni to come to you to introduce yourself.
Hello. Yes. Yeah. Evgueni Ivanov. I work also in Switzerland, but I'm working for a Belgian company called UCB. I'm responsible for their digital solutions portfolio, specifically focusing on rheumatology. And in my role, I'm looking at addressing specific healthcare gaps and needs by leveraging digital solutions to the maximum. So that's where the future of partnerships and collaborations really comes in from my perspective as well.
Great stuff. Thank you. So look, what I think the audience can see then is there's a lot of thought and future vision that comes out of Switzerland when it comes down to the kind of people that are here and the brainstorming and the idea generation that comes up. And obviously we're tasked with looking towards the future quite a lot, but trying to live in the here and now. So if we want to acknowledge that we're here right now, but we're trying to look at the bigger picture and have a focus on the long-term strategic look ahead, 10 plus years, what's the world going to look like? To Hicham's point, 30 years out, we don't know. Maybe 10 years, we can take a bit of a bet and try and position accordingly. But Hicham, from your view, how would you want to incorporate this into the way we develop new treatments? What could we do in this space?
Well, thanks a lot, Chris. I think before we talk about this question is to put some definition around the future, what we mean by the future.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, there's one certainty that no one can predict the future. Otherwise, we won't be here sitting together, and whether we can play a lotto, something like that. And And there are many possibilities. And here the core is for imagination. And that's something that we working hard on it. We cannot predict, but we can imagine what the future could look like. And if I can borrow a theory from Peter Hinson, when he was talking about the future, he was talking about the day after tomorrow. Not the movie 2012, but the day after tomorrow as a theory. And what he meant is that there are 3 buckets. Basically, there is what you call today is the now. There is tomorrow is the new, and there is the day after tomorrow is the next. What I mean by today, all of us, when we open our laptop in the morning, there are 200 plus email waiting for us. There's a new competitor, couple of doctors we want to reach, stock out somewhere, pricing decision. All those are very important things that we need to solve. And most of the time, they are behind what you call current value creation. And there is then tomorrow. And tomorrow sometimes it could be a pain for all of us. It's the MRP process, it's the budget, it's the next 3 years, what can we do? And then there is the day after tomorrow. Start thinking basically about what are the ideas that completely change the paradigm, a new business model, a new standard of care. And if you ask any company here, they would say, well, we do that. We spend 70% of today, 20% of tomorrow, and maybe 10% of the day after tomorrow. The reality, it's 90-10, 0. So we spend 90% of what we do today, 10% of tomorrow, and maybe 0. And to your question now, I think that pharma, there's 2 pharma. There's the pharma of R&D, and there's pharma of the rest of the organization, commercial, medical. R&D, they look the next 10 years, next 20 years, next 30 years. Every time there's a new technology platform that might change standard of care, they invest and they're ready. But commercial, medical, and the rest of the organization, we fall behind. We're always like 10 years, 15 years behind, not only R&D, but also the rest of the industries like FMCG. And that's something that we really need to look at. Now, it is also fair not to ask people to be ambidextrous organization, because the skills of thinking about strategic foresight, what might happen 10 years or 20 years, it's completely different from skill set of people that needs to focus on today and tomorrow's business. And today, not today, but currently, I would say that few companies, they have a dedicated team that only does that. Look at, what might happen. And the best example is automotive industry. Every year they release a concept car, and this build excitement within the general public. But, they don't do that because they like to do it. It's cool, because that concept car inform the next in innovation in manufacturing, in material, in how they will business model. We don't do that in pharma or health tech, and I think that's a call to action.
So build, put in front of people, show people what it can look like, inspire them to get on
excitement.
With it. Yeah. Okay, that's brilliant. I like that. Let's jump to Evgueni. Looking ahead, taking on board what Hicham is saying. Always the lens on the future of health, but at the moment in biopharma as a broad industry, we're seeing a trend to move more and more towards speciality and rare diseases. Where can we really elicit change? What can we do that is beneficial? But by doing that, there is a need, and we're creating that need to continuously develop tools, devices, things that support diagnostics, therapy management. What are you doing to approach this? How can we address this and be ready for the future, but at the same time address what we need now? Oh, you're on mute. We've lost you.
Apologies. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah. Thanks, Grace, for the question. So yeah, I think looking from where pharma is today and where we've come from over the last probably 10 years, I think we do still focus on kind of very specific therapeutic areas, right? And the focus is very time limited and usually linked to our core assets, right? So I think we have a lot to offer. And in particular time frame, we do bring kind of the best expertise that the healthcare system does get to offer, because we do work across research and development in the pharmaceutical industry, but also work with a key specialist We work, in biomarkers, in digital space, in services and solutions, and so we do have a lot to offer to the system, which goes beyond our core competency, right? Which is developing drugs and launching them and commercializing them. So unfortunately, at the moment, we're still very far away from where we need to be, right? So I think already we made a lot of progress in terms of stopping trying to build everything ourselves, which is, I think, where the whole of pharma started 5-10 years ago in the space, and trying to actually partner with the best providers and the best integrated platform players out there. As Hicham mentioned, nobody knows the future, so it's very difficult to predict. But I think we need to keep trying that and trying to position it versus our core offering, right? And what I'd like to see where it should really evolve is to true partnerships, right? You said that there's a lot of focus from our side, especially on the specialty and rare diseases area, right? That's not necessarily where our customers are focused on, right? So beyond the specialty, if you look at the healthcare systems as a whole, that's not where their priority is. So we do need to expand our focus areas and partner in a much broader scale, right? So for example, from my perspective, I focus on rheumatology. Beyond the rheumatologist, there are very few people who actually care about this particular area because it is quite small and quite specialized. So for me to be successful, I really need to look at it from a much broader perspective, which in my case is the musculoskeletal conditions, right, which are much broader, more common, and a much bigger issue for the healthcare system. So I think we need to step away and bring our expertise to partner with the broader healthcare system in the broader sense, right, and really move into the partnerships mode where it's self-sustainable. Because I think a lot of what we do at the moment is still very much focused on the fee-for-service service where pharma pays and somebody builds and delivers.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess what you say about working in a particular area, I think we've all experienced that we work within a therapy area, and Hicham and I maybe have slightly different roles, that we work across therapy areas these days. But for me, also looking for scalable solutions, something that can support multiple areas, maybe makes it more viable to take it forwards. I want to just dip into a question that's come in on the chat side as well, because I think it's quite timely to what Evgueni's talking about. Derek asks, any thoughts on how pharma will continue to move towards more digital patient engagement solutions, not just focusing on HCP engagement? And maybe before I put it to the panel, I'll just make a statement from my side of, I think one of the mistakes we make early on, and this is where we'll change towards the future, is we're still differentiating between patients and HCPs, and we're not considering customer, and thinking about it as a customer engagement solution. So regardless what hat you're wearing, for me, it should be a multidisciplinary solution that's engaging and feeding everybody, not just if you're here, you go through this door and that's the only corridor you can walk down, and if you're a patient, it must be this. So that's my kind of starting point of how I would address Derek's question. But I don't know if you guys have any comments you'd like to add before we keep kind of moving forward. I'm conscious we're on a tight timeline today, so I want to make sure we cover everything.
I can provide a comment here. I think splitting this up into different categories of customers is a very pharma-focused, again, problem, right? If you look at the way pharma organization is structured, you have people who take care of the physicians, people who take care of patients, people who take care of payers and healthcare organizations. I think if you start looking holistically in terms of solving specific issues, that framework should disappear, right? That you're actually trying to solve a problem, not really address a specific customer need.
So the future of health also involves a restructure of how we approach it from the inside.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think it's, to Evgueni's point, I think it's important to keep different audiences in mind, because they obviously will have different interests and needs. But, even with patients versus caregivers, also patients, they don't see themselves as patients. They're living with a chronic disease potentially, but they see themselves as people living a hopefully fantastic life. And so I think there's a lot of bias in our thinking as pharma industry of, let's say, these audiences. Also, when you think of HCPs, we tend to think of physicians. There are many other healthcare professionals that the patient would touch upon that we should consider. And so taking a more inclusive approach, but definitely broadening these definitions of our audiences is really important.
Yeah, well, I think that's a really nice segue actually into the next question that I want to get to. And Sander, you're probably the best person to answer it, I think, as well, which is, you know, taking all of this on board. And I also think there's another question that from Pablo in the chat, which probably can incorporate into this. But
yeah,
we take into account everything that we've talked about so far and what we've heard. So just how important will system technology and connectivity be for the future of health? You know, bringing everything together. Pablo's question of the big boys coming in, you know, and will big tech enter the pharma industries by sheer force of data, innovation, and computation? From me, I hope so, yes. But Sander, I think your opinion here would be highly valued, and we'd love to hear what you think about it.
Right. So the first part of the story is that everyone will have a role to play. I think Evgueni already spoke to some of the elements where pharma, and so does Hicham, where we have expertise, experience, and decades of let's say making the mistakes and taking the learnings and improving. There's a lot we don't do good enough yet, but there's a lot of learning from those years, right? And so I think when you think around big tech, absolutely, I hope they move in because they have experience we don't have and they have expertise we don't have. But that's where the partnership aspect is so critical. And so when you think around, unfortunately, the systems are still seen on their own. When you think around, I talk more about ecosystems these days, and systems form part of that. And we need to reflect more the healthcare reality, both for the, let's call them still patients, as well as the HCPs. And so we have a role to play, so does big tech, but understanding that role, what is appropriate for pharma, where are our unique capabilities? I think validation, taking a validated evidence-based approach, integrating into trial settings, integrating into development plans, those are very natural fits for us. Maybe developing these very sophisticated data models and data engines, probably not, right? And that goes into partnering effectively. And so yeah. I think from the systems perspective, we need to move well away from standalone. Systems need to not always integrate, but at a minimum, they need to be able to communicate. And I think that goes partly to the connectivity, because I think system connectivity is something we don't see enough of. A lot of it is still sort of a fee-based model, which ultimately tends to lead to relatively standalone solutions. Mm-hmm. We need a much more transparent and open model. Data sharing is an important piece of that. How are we finally getting to models, think of digital ledgers, blockchain type technologies that actually allow us to work with data in a much broader way. It's only one example. But I think more than anything from a connectivity perspective, it's not a one size fits all when it comes to what kind of channels are we deploying, what kind of content are we positioning where. And so we have as pharma a role to play, but there are many other resources that a patient or a physician would access or want to access. And partly, we can enable that. So I think the idea of these individual solutions that are beautifully on a necklace, so to say, which is a little bit how we are executing at the moment, it's not going to work for anyone, because it almost means you have to go through one by one until you find the one that works for you. So it needs to become more open, more transparent, and more organic for many reasons, of which I hope I've highlighted a few.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, I think just the story of connectivity alone is a very nice example to give of finding that common language. I really like the way you say it doesn't have to be a standard the same for everybody, but the ability to talk and to connect and share is going to be an important step. And we know this technology exists. If you look at people wearing smartwatches, using phones, who go running and exercise, this stuff is being shared. If this is pretty run-of-the-mill stuff. So yeah, that makes an awful lot of sense. And I hope for people it helps tie together, about looking to the future and what we're thinking about with what Hicham is talking about, and maybe building some examples and showing people to get inspired and excited by. Starting to think about, who the right partners are and where do we need to build scalability and the right type of solutions, as Evgueni is talking about, and then pulling it all together with that ability to share and collaborate and use the power of combination rather than fragmenting and trying to build out from there. I think that's quite a nice segue into maybe a a 60-second spiel for the audience on what the Future of Health Alliance is, something that you guys are all founding members of. And for everybody to know, this is a fledgling organization, if you like. It's built by a network of like-minded people like Sander and Hicham and Evgueni, myself, and a few others. We're all working within the biopharma space or in associated functions. We're working on future of health programs, if you like, looking into the future, strategizing, trying to build solutions and pull things together and working on that necklace, exactly as Sander talks about, and trying to hold hands and connect and take that step forward. But more importantly, and hopefully what you'll see from this, is that we're willing to share ideas, to support each other, to try and support the evolution of healthcare and pharma's digital fluency and the incorporation of data, digital and technology in order to take us forwards and ultimately transform. Importantly, we're not trying to disrupt. We're trying to just build incremental change that's really going to be meaningful and help us move forwards. And our goal is really to advance the industry towards preventative data-driven care, to maximize how digital health can contribute towards optimal outcomes. What it's not saying is digital is the silver bullet and the solution of, but it definitely plays a role and it can augment it and be extra. So, we're trying to create this community of best practice to share those ideas. We're focusing on patient experience programs, or maybe even, to correct myself, customer experience programs, and organizing digital learning through numerous forums. This is kind of a starting point of talking about it: online events, virtual discussions. You'll see the link to Curated Health, which is a fantastic portal for learning and gathering information, but also for sharing it and pushing out. Hicham is the brainchild behind this. I would highly recommend you go and take a look, and you will definitely get something valuable from it. And then last but not least, how to communicate with us and where to move forward. I'll share a link to a Slack channel in a moment, but playing with it earlier, it wasn't being particularly friendly, which is also a thing we find within digital health, that sometimes things don't quite work as we expect them to, but hopefully it does. If not, you can always reach out to any one of us via our LinkedIn feed and connect to us, and we'll find a way to bring people into the fold. But importantly, to do that, you kind of need to be on board with the idea of one of the primary goals is to acknowledge the bigger picture. Think big, but focus on today, and think about how we can fix problems today and take our journey towards the future. And that's really what the future of pharma is about. That's how pharma will be ready for the future, because it's about us solving what we need and building examples, pulling together network, collaborating, and ultimately adapting and adjusting our model to move forward. So with that, I'm conscious that we've got 5 minutes at the end. I'm just going to double check for any questions in the chat in case we've missed anything. Hopefully, Pablo, I think we've answered your question, that maybe there's a resounding yes. We want to see these guys come in and force change. That will be a good thing. I want to say a very big thank you to the gentlemen for joining us as a male panel on Women's Day. Maybe we're bucking the trend a little bit, but that's just an unfortunate thing. So there are brilliant ideas come from everywhere. With that, I'm going to say thank you. But what I am going to do is, we're also very conscious of world events right now. And I know that Hicham particularly is working very hard to try and do whatever he can to help drive from a digital channel to enable access to care and support for people that are facing challenges in Ukraine. So Hicham, maybe 2 minutes from yourself, and then we'll close up and move on to the next session.
Yeah, again, thank you, Chris, and thank you, Sanders and Evgueni. Actually, it's really terrible what is happening in Europe now. And as of we speak today, it's more than 1.5 million people that left basically the comfort and safety of their home, and they are spread all over Europe. And this is this kind of situation where it calls for all of us. We're not anymore just pharma, we are people working in healthcare. And we are setting up European telehealth relief. And that's a good example of how health tech company, doctors, and other part of volunteer can work together to provide basically consultation and care at distance, because those people, they don't speak English, they speak only Ukrainian or Russian. So we launched a call called Ukraine Telehealth Relief. We have now over 300 clinicians. 70% of them, they speak Ukrainian or Russian. We have 20 plus telehealth provider that propose at no cost their own platform. And in between, we realized that there's not an organization today that allow to everyone to volunteer using digital health technology. So we launched an NGO called Health Tech Without Border. And the idea is to build infrastructure not only for the Ukrainian, but anytime there is a disaster somewhere, we are ready to help. And if you want to join, if you want to contribute now to help Ukraine or later on, you're more than welcome. It's a movement. It's not hierarchical, and anyone will join as an equal partner. Thank you again, Chris.
You're welcome. And I think it's a great example of the future of health is fixing an issue of today and looking forward to the future. And Hicham, I know that you're very passionate about this subject and you put a lot of personal time into this. So hopefully it can be something that makes a difference.
Yeah, thank you.
To circle back, gentlemen, thank you very much for your thoughts and comments today. Hopefully it's inspired the audience to really kind of dig in and look to the future and bring forward what's really going to elicit change, which is ideas and a willingness to put them into practice. So on that, I'm guessing we will hand back
Women's Day.
My wife and my daughter will be home soon, so I shall celebrate with them the power of the female mind. So yes, gentlemen, thank you. Audience, thank you.
Thank you.
Enjoy the rest of the next normal.